Namaste everyone, this is Dr. Ayesha Butalia. Today's topic is how to write references in a research paper or maybe in a project report, in an analysis report of any undergraduate project report, postgraduate, or even a PhD thesis. So this references is a very important section. Most of the time it is very much neglected by the research scholars, but uh, for a beginner it is very necessary to understand that it's a very important topic. So we will be covering how to write the references in our today's presentation. So basically it is the almost the last section of any research paper writing or a project report, analysis report, or a thesis report. So to start with, there are various components in a research paper. Here we have written IEEE because the standard format for electrical, electronics, computer engineering students. Almost every research scholar refers to this format. Okay, it is by a standard organization called IEEE. So we have got the title, we have got the abstract, the introduction, the literature survey. We have got a separate presentations on YouTube. The link is given on the description box. You can go and check how to write the abstract, how to write the introduction, literature survey, how to select your research topic, and all different modules. Next is the methodology. Okay, you have to discuss your technology or the algorithms which you are used in your research or you're planning to use it, which you are proposing in your research paper, the proposed system or the model or the framework. There is a different presentation on differences between what is a framework, what is a model. Since the names are different, but they look quite similar. But as said that since the names are different, their meanings also might be different. It is very necessary for a research scholar to understand the difference so that proper words are used in a quality paper. The next section is experimentation and result and discussion, where you try to summarize and compare all your results with the existing ones so that you prove how your work is better and in an improvised way. We have different presentation on this also available on YouTube. Okay, so last but not the least is the reference section. So coming to what is referencing. Referencing is used to tell the reader where ideas from other resources have been used in your work. Okay, so there are many reasons why it is important to reference sources correctly. It shows the reader that you can find and use sources to create a solid argument. It properly credits the originators of ideas, theories, and research findings. It shows the reader how your argument relates to the big picture. Okay, now basically, whenever you try to recognize your problem statement, as said earlier presentations, that there are two types of problem, type 1 and type 2, and maybe type 3 as well. Type 1, that your problem statement is the existing problem solved by somebody else. You're trying to just do the improvisation by your own methods. Type 2 is that your idea is totally novel, but you're using some existing algorithms to solve your novel idea. Third type is that your idea is totally novel, plus your method is also totally novel. Okay, so you need to refer, as said in the literature survey presentation, that even if it's a type 1, type 2, type 3, that's whether it's a research, which is type 1, or whether it is innovation, type 2 or type 3. Even in case of innovation, you need to do the research. And research means you need to do the literature survey. That means you try to, survey means you try to dig out the information of already existing work that has been done on something related to your topic. Okay, if it's not there, then only you can say that it's novel. Otherwise, how you can just imagine and say that that's something novel? And when you spend maybe years or a couple of months on that research, and later you find out that that was not a novel. Already some person had already done that work maybe 6 months earlier, maybe 10 years back. Okay, it becomes a blunder. So that is why you do literature survey. So while literature survey, you are trying to refer the papers, okay, maybe of type 1 or maybe of type 2 or type 3 of research, whatever you are doing. You try to recognize those papers, because even if it's a novel idea, you might have got it from some others, correlated stuff. So you need to recognize that person work. Maybe it's a type 1 problem. The problem statement is original. You found the loopholes in its conclusion and the future scope, as said in our earlier presentation of literature survey. So probably then also you need to recognize that originator, okay, who proposed you that future scope. It's a type 2 problem, then again you need to, if you're trying to use somebody else algorithm to solve your innovation, then you need to recognize that algorithms originator. Okay, and even it's a type 3 problem, you have done literature survey, you've tried to prove that these were not the things done, these were the findings which were not as per the mark. So even then you need to mark those references. So basically whatever you are doing in the literature survey, or maybe while literature survey you are trying to propose a solution, while proposing the solution you have a systematic diagram where you need some other person's resources. Okay, so that is all you need to mention in the reference section in the form of papers, and how to do it, that we are going to see it. Okay, so failure to properly acknowledge sources is called plagiarism, and it can carry significant academic penalties. Some people, what they do, they read a paper, they try to convert their ideas in their own words. Absolutely, it has to be done. You cannot copy paste the entire material, okay, to prove your quality of the paper. But even though the idea remains original to the originator, even though you write it in your own words, that person has already published their work, proved that work, that it was originated from them. Okay, so even though you write it on your own words, you need to recognize. Otherwise, as said, failure to, again I'll repeat, failure to properly acknowledge sources is called plagiarism. Okay, and it can carry significant academic penalties. Okay, your work can be seen to be degraded in that case. So generally it is expected that since it's a small project, okay, maybe an undergraduate project, then at least 25 to 30 major papers should be listed, and 50 reference papers need to be read. So out of 50 papers, okay, you try to read, you try to survey, and then out of that you try to have the most importantly 30 picked up papers, and that you can refer in your project report. Okay, and maybe it's a research paper, then also it is valid to share minimum 13 to 14 references, to say maximum. Okay, it can go ahead, but generally it is expected that a good research paper should have 25 to 30 research papers. So how do you start in the literature survey section for an undergraduate project? Probably 50 papers, you jot down 30 papers, and that becomes your references. Okay, so you have the serial number, so you have 1 2 3 4. Okay, then you have author name of the reference paper, then the title of the paper in quotes, and when it was published, right? Then at least 20 to 25 to 30 major papers should be listed, and 50 reference papers need to be read. This is for undergraduate. For postgraduate, you almost double it. Okay, say 100. And for PhD, I think you should again double it. Okay, it may be 3 times also. So around 300 references should be there in the thesis report, but you can end up to finalizing to 200 references. So it's a rough idea. Do not make that count strict, but then so research paper should be considered like 4 to 6 paper for introduction. You can make folder wise where these papers are related to the introduction, which will help me in writing the research paper or the report. And when you go likewise, when you write a research paper, maybe it may take 6 months, but when you write module wise, you understand what is the next step, what I need to do. So the first thing, I need to identify the introduction. So I collect the papers, write an introduction. Then I know that my second section is literature survey. So I collect papers related to the existing algorithms. So this is how you can become your own self-guide, how to go about it. So by the time you end with the paper, you also cover up a lot of work which needs to be done in sequence wise. Then next you can collect methodologies, 4 papers related to that. So maybe 2 papers related to the proposed system, then 2 papers related to the expression or the research and the diagrams, which may help you to, jot down your architectural work. Then 2 papers rather than discussion and results, because sometimes you need to understand what tools I should use for testing, for experimentation. So some related works, what people have used, you can even see those type of stuff only for testing purpose. So if you can summarize this, this will approximately go to 25 to 30 papers. Okay, so it may be that you say refer 10 papers for discussion and result, and out of them 2 you find it very, very relevant. That is why I've written 2. So that is why out of 50 you jot down 30, because you need to refer more papers, and then probably some may not be of any use. But since the title is something similar which you try to find, uh, why it is 30 and 50 ratio, because most of the times it becomes quite useful. So at least you can say that 50%. Okay, if we say 50 and 30, it is approximately 50 to 60% of the papers which you try to download are relevant. Now, basically, the problem arises that what type of papers, because when you go to search nowadays on Google, you may get even up to 2000 papers related to your work. So it becomes a headache for a researcher. So I'll just give you a simple, prescription which might help you, and that is that, see, first you need to identify there are transaction papers. Okay, they are called as transaction papers. If you can see here, IEEE transaction. Then you've got journal papers, you've got conference proceedings, you've got books, you've got some stuff from the web. Okay, some documents which are also white papers, you can use it, which relates to your topic. So there are different styles to write specifically. It's given here very easily. If you want, there is a document uh, in the description box. You can just go through in detail how to write. If you want to mention the book in the reference section, how it should be written. If it's a conference paper, how it should be written. But just give you a simple hint that first you should identify what is the difference between a transaction or a journal paper and a conference paper. So conference is generally where people meet on the topic of the title of the conference, and there are sessions where people try to share their expertise in the papers, and all the people sitting in the session are going to present related papers. So initial researcher should always approach the conferences and present their paper there, because there are experts and judges for the sessions which provide you guidelines and what is wrong and what is right, whether you are in the right direction. They give you some expertise prescription for your work, as well as there are other people presenting on the similar topic. You need to, you will also get knowledge that what other people are doing in a similar area. So initially you go for conferences. So the proceedings means the papers which are collected, after the conference, they are in the form of booklet, and that is called proceedings. Now, generally, there are a lot of local conferencing going on, and they don't publish the conference up to the mark and the standards. Okay, they generally, it is to promote the people to share their work, to improve their presentation skills, to get expertise, and so on. That's the main purpose of conference. So maybe you may not find those papers up to the mark in terms of formatting, but I recommend that you should search for some recent conference papers, because people generally share their new research and their new ideas in conferences. Okay, whereas in journal or the transaction paper, generally a good transaction, if you submit the paper today, it requires at least 1 to 1.5 years of review process when it goes to a lot of experts, and the time it is published, it is already 2 years ahead. Okay, so maybe it not really, but it may sound a little bit of outdated. But since they are gone through a lot of review process, Okay, they are very, very good quality papers. So I think you should have combination of some journal and transaction paper and some conference paper. Just keep a note. In my view, what I have referred in so many years, conferences may give you some very new ideas, whereas journal papers can give you a very good quality stuff. So taking the combination of both of them, so you should have what generally I refer to my research students is that you go for some current papers, the present year papers, and generally the person who writes the paper, he refers to a lot of original work, and then in the reference section, get the related amount of work. If that work is of good quality, already one research paper to be truly understood, it takes a plenty amount of time, and you need to go to all the references which are given in one paper. So even if you take 5 base papers and each papers have got 30 references each, you can understand that 5 into 30, 150 papers, you need to understand if you want to grasp the entire 5 papers and combine it and propose a work, that also can be done. So in similarly, you try to differentiate the transaction journal papers and the conference papers. For some concepts, you need to refer the books, okay, some documents, some URLs you may visit, which are very, very recent and handy and gives you the tools how to go about it. Okay, so these are generally the references. So this is how you try to understand, okay, which type of papers, how, and how many. So these type of questions like how, why, what, okay. So these type of questions are answered. So coming to the format, if it's a journal paper, you need to specify the authors. Generally, we refer 3 authors, and if there are more than 3 of authors, we say et al. Okay, so that means there may be more than 3 authors, but making the reference too lengthy, we only put maximum 3 authors and say et al. Okay, and then the title of the paper, then the journal title, that means this is the title of the paper which was referred. Journal title is the title of the journal in which it was published, and generally it is in italic, okay, with initial capitals, right? And the title of the paper is in double quotes, okay, and then the volume of the journal and the page numbers and the year in which it was published. So generally a journal may be a yearly publication. So maybe in 2016 it was volume 1, in 2017 it was volume 2, in 2018 it was volume 3, and so on. If it's it's published twice a year, it may be 2016 volume 1, 2016 volume 2, right? Similarly, you need to specify the volume, the page number. So if the entire journal has 200 pages, maybe 6 pages of your title, exactly on which page number of the journal it is there, you can mention this. Probably it is mandatory in some of the formats, and obviously in the year it was published. Okay, so this is how you go about it. In the conference, generally it is the same. The only thing is, again, the paper authors, the title in the quotes, and proceeding conference title in italics. Now, generally you can write like this, but if you consider the IEEE format, it is, you have to write in proceeding of, and then the title of the conference. Now, in proceeding of, proceeding can be fully written, or also it can be in proc of. Now, this in proc of or in proceeding of, okay, it should not be in italic, and rest the conference title should be in italic. In many of the cases, this comma over here, it is inside the quotes, okay. So I'll again repeat, basically this comma here, this is inside the quotes, okay, as per the standards, but it doesn't matter even if it is outside. It just was to be kindly noted. Now when it is comes to the books, then it has author names, it has title in italics, okay, with initial capital letters, publisher, the place, and the year. Okay, if it's a web information, then author name, if available, or the website name, title or page or article in the normal text without initial capitals, full URL visited on the date with DD, date, month, and year, day, month, and year. Okay, and if it's an IEEE transaction paper, you have an author name. Okay, you have title of the paper. Okay, this comma can be inside. IEEE transactions on the related topic name with initial capital letter in italics, volume, number, the page numbers, and the date. Now it's an IEEE transaction, so you can mention IEEE transaction on. But if since it's a transaction or journal paper, this entire thing is in italics. Okay, but if it's a conference paper, then the in proceeding of should not be in italics, and the conference name should be in italics. So if it is a proceeding, then it will be in proceeding of IEEE conference on. Okay, so IEEE conference on, so the title should be in italics, right? But here there you should not write in transaction of, in whether it's a transaction or journal paper. Okay, it is clearly mentioned that it is a journal or transaction paper, whether. But if it's a conference paper, okay, you need to specify proceeding. So the moment the word proceeding comes, it understands that it's a conference paper. Okay, whereas if no proceeding word is used, then it is a journal or a transaction paper. Okay, if it's a CSI paper, then you can say CSI transaction on, or you can say international conference on, or national conference on. Okay, so you can in proceeding of national conference on, right? So if it's a journal, then you can say international journal on. Similarly, you can specify whatever references you are using. Okay, it is very, very necessary that whatever work you are specifying in your paper or project report, it should have the supporting references. Now you can number it 1, 2, 3, 4 accordingly. Okay, and that number you should specify in your paper where you actually referred it. So maybe in introduction section, okay, on say second paragraph, the second paragraph was on reference number 5. So over there, you can mention 5 in square brackets. Now, where to mention the references, that can be at the end of the paragraph, or maybe at the specific line where you made the highlight from the paper. Now, it need not be necessary that the entire paragraph was from one paper. Maybe one paragraph was from 5 papers. Okay. So maybe on the specific line end, you can mention the appropriate reference number, or maybe at the end you can specify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So likewise. Okay, generally abstract do not have references. It's compulsory, actually. You should note that abstract do not have references. It is totally your proposed work which you are writing entirely by your own. Okay, so abstract should not have references, whereas all the other sections should have the supportive references, right? So if you have got 30 references listed in your paper or in your project report, it should be mentioned exactly where that reference was used. Okay, so just see with an example. We'll see here. If you can see this example, this is the author name. Okay, it may not be very clear, but I think it would be understood. We are not getting exactly the reference. Just an example. This is the author names. Okay, they have specified the year over year. Then it is the manual for the child behavior checklist and revised child behavior profile. Okay, so this is a manual actually, and you know this is from where the source is being taken, from the Burlington University of Vermont. Okay, so all the details which should be required is over here. So this is one form how you can write the references. Now this is another form how this is written. Basically, it's the bibliography. So here the author is mentioned, okay, the project name is mentioned, and the hyperlink is mentioned. Similarly, this topic is mentioned and the hyperlink is mentioned. Over here, the author is mentioned, in which year, okay, and maybe the other authors, and then the details of the page number, and in which report it was published, in which month, and obviously year 1994 it is mentioned. Now here next is that the proceeding is, this is a conference paper. It's clearly, you can highlight because it's a proceedings, okay, published in 1990. Now what I'm trying to highlight here is that you can have 1, 2, 3, 4. where it maybe introduction is your first section. So introduction first, where you will refer, that will be called as 1. The second paragraph, if you mention certain references, it will be 2. So it can be sequence wise. There can be another method, author wise. Okay, so even you can even have the references author wise. Then the sequence would not be maintained in the paper, because you may have the author named C first and then the author named A second. Okay, so then the alphabetical wise as per the author name can also be the listing. Okay, but so it depends upon your style of writing, and maybe your guide can specify which style of writing he or she wants you to put you in the paper or the project report. So you can consult your guide for which type of format, but generally I recommend that 1, 2, 3, 4 would be more relevant. Okay, some people try to put the latest papers, that means the published in the present year up, and then gradually they go in the descending orders in terms of years. So that also can be the way, but generally in my point of view, 1, 2, 3, 4, because whenever you are reading a particular paper, so if you are reading the first section and you don't understand the algorithm which has been just mentioned in the paragraph, you need to refer that paper which has been mentioned there. You download the paper by seeing the reference, and then you try to understand the algorithm, because in 6 pages you cannot highlight the entire thesis work. So you need to download the papers which are mentioned in the references, so it becomes very easy to locate if it is in a chronological order of numbering. Okay, because it's 1, so you directly go to 1. But even if it's author wise, you can still search. It depends how your mindset is to find that particular reference link. So this is all about the references section. I hope that this session would be helpful to you. If you have any queries, you can write down in the comment box, or maybe mail me in the mail ID given here. Okay, I will be very happy to solve your doubts. Thank you very much.